Welcome back. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means, Mental Health Minute. And for the month of April, we are doing Men, Mind, Body, the blueprints of well-being. It's all about providing tangible resources for the month of April for our men around health, wealth, and knowledge of self. And today, we are doing a part two on this Mental Health Minute to grief. Yes, you heard it right. I did a video about grief with the therapist from Chicago, Miss Daisy Rios. And I shared in that segment that I will do many other segments around grief. So today I have a special guest that is coming to the building, Mr. Dr. Joe. I had him on different segments here on my platform. And today he will be coming and blessing us with some gems around men and grief and the silent suppression. We tend to suppress a lot, men, around grief and not sharing things that we are going through and those feelings that we are going through. And I asked Dr. Joe to come through and bless us with some gems to discuss this. So you know how we do it. It is Wednesday. It is Mental Health Minute. And for the month of April, men, mind, body, the blueprint of well-being. Let's get after it and let's welcome Dr. Joe to the building and bring him into the space. You know what's next. Let's go. Man. So, in the spirit of that, of course, as much as I love being the messenger, I love bringing messengers through. And of course, I got Dr. Joe back in the building to support us in this space. And today, Dr. Joe got his therapy hat on because we are going to be talking about grief. And not just grief in general, because we had already one segment about that where we talked about the 5 levels of it. Today, we want to focus on our men and them grieving and how maybe sometimes they hold it in and how we need to release that grief. Like we need to go through the motions of that. And obviously, I am an advocate of that. I know Dr. Joe is as well, but I want Dr. Joe to give us a chat about that. So, Dr. Joe, you know what the topic is about. Thank you for coming through again and blessing us. What you got for us?
Yeah, man. So, kind of jumping right in it. When you begin to think about this word grief, I think there's a oftentimes I'm going to say a universal misunderstanding of what grief is, right? And what I mean by that is grief does not look the same for everybody, right? And so, one of the things that we often hear people say, especially the men, right? When we deal with any type of loss. And I want us to understand, right? Grief can happen because oftentimes grief is associated with like a physical death, right? Somebody is no longer here. But I want you to imagine losing a person that is still alive, right? But they're no longer in your life the way that you desire them to be, right? That can be a level of grief that people go through as well. But grief is essentially an emotional process when you deal with any type of loss. And when I say there's been a miscommunication on what grief is, I was going to share a little bit earlier that oftentimes we hear be strong, right? Just take your time. It's gonna just time will heal all wounds. And I'm telling you, that's a lie. That's a lie, bro. Like the reality is, as men, as much as we're taught to be tough, one of the worst things that we can do is try to, in a sense, let me just tough this out. I'm okay. Everything is good. We lying to ourselves, right? And so the first thing that I would say is understand that your grief as a man may not look like the grief that your boy has or your daddy has or your brother has, right? And so you have to pay attention to the signs of the grief that's going on with you. I'm gonna start there.
Yeah, no, you hit great points there, Dr. Joe. And I think, when I think of men and maybe the way they hold it in, right? And you said it, that tough exterior, being taught like what is tough and what is not tough, right? And maybe some like I really feel a lot of those thoughts fall into like the oasis space where you're in a desert and you think you seeing water. And really I feel like you like you said, everybody's grief has different levels. You can't compare the two because it's very individual. How do we get our men to share, right? As opposed to like hold it in, right? And I know, Dr. Joe, I'm guilty of it sometimes. where I'll navigate it myself, right? And I'm feeling like I'm doing the best for myself because I'm not putting it on others. That's usually my saying. I'm not putting it on others. I'm
Yeah,
taking care of it myself.
yeah.
I guess, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, think about it, right? When you just the phrase you use, I'm not putting it on others. So just imagine you, right? We talked off air in regards to the weightlifting you've been doing, right? So imagine, taking the weight and you putting it on other people, right? Putting it on other people, putting it on other people, putting it on other people, right? So you're taking all that weight and you put it on other people. But now imagine taking that weight and just putting it on yourself, right? Putting it on yourself, put it on yourself, right? And so what's interesting to me is no matter how we look at it, right? There's this level of how do I handle dealing with whatever I'm dealing with, right? There's this level of I was told that this will work, and then you feel that's not working for me, right? You were told, hey, do it like this, and then you realize, well, I tried that. That's not working for me. And so, what people have to do is they have to understand that grief could manifest in fatigue, right? Like you're getting tired. It could manifest in maybe a changing of your diet, right? It could manifest in physical pain, right? You feel it in the body, right? It could manifest in, man, I can't concentrate the way that I used to be able to concentrate. Like I feel like my mind is racing or I'm losing myself, right? It can manifest in so many ways. And the key is for you to begin to be able to identify the changes that's happening and say, hey, something is going on with me and not necessarily just be okay with it, but know that's part of the process. But the strength comes when you say something isn't right, and now you go and ask for help, whether that's with people close to you that can help guide you, whether it's professional help, whether it's prayer, however you get down. But the reality is, too many of us, we lie, we lie, we lie, and we say, you know what, I'm all right, I'm dealing with it, I'm okay. The reality is, like you asked me earlier, I am okay, but I got my moments where I just break down. I just break down, right? Like you can't stop a feeling of knowing that you will never ever see somebody in the physical again, right? You can't stop that feeling. You can't stop the feeling of saying, oh my goodness, I've spent 15 to 20 years with this person and now it's over. My life is going to look different, right? That grief may look different than a death, right? But it's grief. And as you go through that process, you have to pay attention to the signs when your body is telling you, hey, slow down. Hey, get help. Hey, meditate. Hey, pray. We have to be able to pay attention and notice those signs.
You're so right. I think that you mentioned a couple steps there. The one, listening to yourself and reaching out to people that you feel comfortable with. If it's not, if you're in the space of like, I take this on myself, as we mentioned, that person is like, I ain't gonna put this on you.
Yep.
Then, feel comfortable at least with somebody that you can talk to about that, right? There's that part, that kind of step of doing that. And then I think there's that other step you mentioned towards the end there, but you also made me think about like, and it was about like the person who is ready and convinced to whether like pray. If you can't reach out to someone, have a prayer or
Yeah.
or take a walk outside and find that moment.
Yep. Yep.
I guess there's a little bit of that mind trick, right? Where we all live in our heads sometimes, especially when grief resonates here and kind of double dutches back and forth from your mind to your heart and resonates really in different ways. Sometimes our own mind is convincing us otherwise, even though we're in the midst of feeling confident. We're going to do it today, right? So how do we get out of that double dutch, Dr. Joe? Right? Like the double dutch of wanting to share, but being reminded that it's weak. It's almost, I'm not trying to be repetitive with my question, but I'm thinking of like the space of the steps you're mentioning, which I totally agree with. Like those are powerful steps. But then there's the also reality of some people who just can't get out of being indecisive of what they should do or how they should approach it, right? So I guess for the indecisive folks or the folks who are playing a little bit of double dutch with those thoughts, how do we hook them up?
Yeah,
No.
when you think about the double dutch, right? For those of you who the younger generation don't know what's popping with the double dutch, right? Like, you waiting the right time to jump in, right? Um, but the beautiful thing about double dutch, as I'm sitting here thinking about that analogy, is from my experience watching, I didn't do a lot myself, but watching people double dutch is one, they had a lot of fun and it brought a lot of smiles to their face, right? And so when I think about grief, one of the reasons I take pictures and I take videos and I spend time is because I know that for a fact that at some point in my life, all I will have is pictures, videos, thoughts, and experiences with that individual or with that whatever that experience or whatever it might have been. And it creates a smile for me, right? It creates a level of, oh man, I remember, right? It actually creates a peace. And I'm saying that just with the analogy of double dutch, but what I will ask people to do when it comes to grief is it is okay to say, let me try this and see if this works better. Let me, as you say, let me go for a walk in the woods. Let me go work out, right? Let me just meditate for a minute. What's most important is if we figure out what works for us, right? And what works for me, I'm not gonna lie, right? There's times where I've broken down over the last month, and what I do is I just go off to my space. I have my good cry, right? I have my good cry. I might cut on some gospel music because my grandma loved gospel music, right? Let that vibe, and after 5 to 10 minutes, I'm okay. All right. I'm good. And I move on, right? But that's been my process. And other people, they may say, you know what? I'm gonna go for a walk. They might say, I'm gonna go to the gym. They might say, you know what? I'm gonna have me a cup of coffee. They might say, I need to call my cousin or my mom and have a conversation, whatever it is, but see what works for you because grief is a process. And guess what? Prayer might work right now. 4 weeks from now, you might have to take a walk. 5 weeks from now, you might need that therapist. 6 weeks from now, you might need that priest or that reverend or whoever it is, right? Whatever, but just figure out what works for you. And it's not an easy thing to do. I'm gonna be honest with you, and allow those tears to come. Right? Tears are nothing but a release of whatever it is that you're going through, and you need that release.
You're so right, Dr. Joe. And I know, I was one who it took me a minute to gravitate to crying or letting out those tears, right? Just because of the tough exterior. And I always felt like it took too much energy for me to cry than just to let it in, which I was fooling myself with that. That's tomfoolery stuff, where I was fooling myself with those own thoughts. And when my mother transitioned, that's when I think I truly connected to crying and allowing the tears to flow. So I love that advice about allowing the tears to flow, letting them out. I guess because we're at the end of our segment here, right? You got a couple minutes here. I guess for the men out there who are going through it, and as you know, and you mentioned it, 5 weeks from now, you're gonna go through it, and you're gonna go on a walk, and you're gonna manage yourself. A month from later, it might be a therapist, right? Then it might be your reverend, right? Your pastor, or whatever else. I guess for the men out there who are struggling with the ebbs and flows of grief, because they come whenever they want.
Yeah.
Like Miss Daisy said, there's five of them, and they pick and choose when they're gonna arrive. They don't come in order. Like, and there's those men out there who are frustrated with that process because, as you know, Dr. Joe, when you're grieving and you're going through that grief, it can show up at any wrong moment, right? You're a powerful public speaker. You know that grief can pop up before you even hit the stage, right?
Man,
Because it doesn't care that you're hitting the stage. It's like,
I've
damn,
got.
the stage.
I'm holding back now,
Yeah,
right? And it's not necessarily that I'm holding back, but like, I'm still in my process.
for
You know what I'm
sure.
saying? And I don't
Yeah.
think people understand in the world sets it up so that it makes us feel like we're supposed to be able to function naturally, even when we're dealing with grief, right?
Hmm.
And it don't work like that.
Yeah.
It don't work like that, man. And so men have to understand that, as tough as we are, it hits you too, right?
Hmm.
It hit you when you least expect it. It hit you at work. It hit you on a date, right? It'll hit you when you parenting, right? And that's another area we got to be careful as fathers, because we'll take some stuff out on our children that ain't got nothing to do with them, right?
Hmm.
But that grief is, man, it's serious. And don't be scared of it, man. Like I tell people all the time, man, I could cry and whoop your ass too. Right? Like it just is what it is, right? And I'm not trying to
It's
be no
okay.
tough guy, but that's just the nature of the beast, right? Like
It's
it's
okay.
okay. Like I'm not scared to cry, right? But it'll
Yeah.
hit you at times.
Yeah. No, you're so right. And that's why I mentioned that, right? Because I know it hit me in moments where I just didn't want it to hit me.
Yeah,
And that was me fighting against it, right? When really, like just you, and I appreciate your vulnerability. Thank you, Dr.
oh
Joe.
yeah,
Like you allow just those tears to come through, right? And it doesn't dictate your manhood or
right,
anything like
right,
that, right? If anything, it just points to you tapping into what you need to tap into, right? Those tears are, as much as they can be painful tears, right? We also know there's a such thing as joyful tears as
oh
well,
yeah, oh
right?
yeah,
The
oh yeah,
remembrance of someone, and we're wrapping up our segment here, and as I think about grief and just my own challenges I face with it, and others that I know who face it, other men who kind of go through it, and the approach of whether I deal with it myself or not. What I learned from you today, Dr. Joe, we don't call it therapy with Dr. Joe here. What I've learned from you is that we got to find someone, if you're one who's holding it and just going to keep it to yourself, find at least one person you're comfortable with to
yes,
share it with, right? To kind of talk to. If that doesn't work, do some meditation, yoga, pray.
yeah,
If you're going to handle it on your own, just don't handle it on your own by throwing it in the closet that has all the junk in it, right? Like, or
right,
the junk
right,
drawer in the kitchen where you just throw a bunch of stuff in it and it just builds up until you
yeah,
clean it, right? And we know with grief, you can't let it just build up. There's no such thing, I believe, in cleaning it. It's ongoing maintenance.
yep,
It's
yep.
preventative. So, in saying that, I want to give you the final thoughts, Dr. Joe, because I really do appreciate this segment of just talking about grief. And we're both two men who have gone through it and are going through it, right, in
Yeah.
our own rights. So, I guess for our men out there who are listening, and for this segment of grief and how we go through it and how we manage it, I guess what are the one, two tangible resources Dr. Joe got at the end of this segment for us?
I want to just speak to what's helped me, right? And the first thing, and you've already actually said it. The first thing is who's in your circle, right? Who's in your circle that you feel comfortable enough with to share, right? Like if you got your partner, right? I think sometimes men feel, especially men who are married, or in a relationship, some of them, they haven't even shown them their true selves because they don't feel comfortable with the person that they're with, right? And that's dangerous. That's dangerous, right? And so, who's in your circle that you can go to? And hopefully, the person that you're sleeping next to or the person that you're around every single day, you're comfortable and you feel safe enough to share your true vulnerable moments, and your true self, right? That's number one, like who's in your circle. And number two is, I'm gonna say this every day, all day. Do you have a therapist, right? Your mom, your grandma, your dad, your best friend, your teacher, your coach, they can be part of your counsel, but that's not your therapist. A therapist is a professional, right? And so if you don't have a therapist, find a therapist. That makes you look strong, right? Getting help makes you look strong, right? So the two things, once again, who's in your circle and do you have a therapist? I'll leave you with that.
Man, I love that, Dr. Joe, and that's what it's about, right? I think the two things you mentioned there, your circle and obviously the therapist piece. These are things me and you advocate
Yeah,
in different ways for all people. But, specifically speaking to our men in this segment, like real talk, like that is exactly what helped me, right? I didn't heal completely until a professional helped me. And I love that you use the word console because obviously I had best friends, my wife, my children, sons, like all be part of that console, right?
Yep. Yep.
But there was a bridge that they couldn't cross with me
That's right.
as my console. The bridge couldn't handle the weight of 10 folks. It just was my big ass that it can handle the weight of, right? Nobody else. So in saying that, I appreciate you, Dr. Joe. I appreciate you coming through. Like I said, this is therapy with Dr. Joe. And that's what I feel this segment is about. So you know what this is about. We're talking about men's mental health for the month of April. I'm going to bring Dr. Joe back so we could talk a little bit about other things that are around therapy and around our men's mental health, but in particular about just men in general, the things that we go through. So you know what my last words are here for y'all. Who's helping you heal, y'all? Peace.